I wish, on behalf of the People's Progressive Party, to congratulate all the Catholics in Guyana and around the world on the appointment, or the election, rather, of a new Pope. Cardinal Robert Prevost was just elected, and I'm sure that the Catholics in Guyana are looking forward excitedly to guidance from the Vatican as they continue to serve that community and the people of Guyana. In the past couple of weeks, I have mentioned briefly my visits to the East Coast villages. And last Sunday, I continued those visits. I visited and had in 3 weeks, about 20 bottom house meetings in the East Coast villages. And it's important when you go to these community meetings that you listen to the concerns of people, but they also give you an idea of what are the most pressing concerns in these areas. I have not heard any major concern about employment or lack of jobs, which used to be a major issue when I attended community meetings, bottom house meetings in the past. I did not hear many complaints about the health facilities in the region or the lack of educational opportunities for people. Those used to be primary concerns of people. The major concern that I've had, particularly from villages, from the enterprise area coming all the way to Georgetown, has been garbage collection, and we're dealing with this. I dealt with this last week. The state of some of the drains, the internal drains, and I outlined how we are addressing those by increasing the subvention to the NDCs and giving them a mini excavator. But one problem has been affecting large numbers of people that seem to be not just a problem for the East Coast, but in most communities in which construction is taking place. So on the East Coast, although it may not be visible to many people who live on the East Coast and around the country, there is a significant amount of work being done at the back of the established villages. We are currently building a 46-kilometer road, Crusher Run Road, and people who live on the coast would never have a clue about that. But a Crusher Run Road is being built from Georgetown all the way to Mahaica. They have 12 contractors working on that road, and it will cost us about $5.5 billion. That road is to give access to the backlands on the East Coast, so that we can then implement the larger project, which is the transmission of power from the Wales facility all the way to Berbice. We have awarded 3 contracts to build these massive steel towers that you see when you travel around the world. And that contract is nearly $500 million US dollars, but to build that futuristic infrastructure for Guyana. And so people, and that would be, they would have a 230 kVA line on that infrastructure. Right now it's a small one. It runs on, we move power from Georgetown to Berbice on these wooden poles on the railway embankment, which have to be removed. But this would allow us to take large volumes of power all the way to Berbice, to industrialize the East Coast, Region 5, Region 6. And because along the way there will be substations, so we can reduce the power, take them off the high-powered transmission lines, and then distribute the power to these communities. Cheaper power, more reliable power, with better infrastructure. Critical for the future. But if you drive, you don't see that happening. This is the machinery of the future being worked on without much fanfare. But the work that's taking place there is creating problems for many of the villagers, and I'll come to that in a minute. Then at the back of the East Coast, we also, consistent with our promise, to develop 50,000 house lots. 18,737 house lots have been allocated to individuals on the East Coast. Of those, 15,933 still, we have not completed the infrastructure work for those house lots yet. It's ongoing now. So people have an allocation letter, but we're spending $52 billion putting in the infrastructure now so people can move into those communities. There are about 40 contractors working on these projects there. So you can imagine the amount of sand, loam, and material that has to go through the East Coast villages, the established villages, to get to these new projects. And this is creating a problem for some communities on the East Coast. Major problems for some, others not so much. So what the ministry did was they designated some access through which the contractors will transit to the backlands to develop these projects. Crucial projects for the future, but their construction is causing some discomfort to people. So there are some access ways, like in Lusignan, LBI, in Enterprise, that most of these trucks use. There are other communities too, along the East Coast. Now the people are up in arms because of the way the trucks operate. But the reason I'm talking about this is that it's not a problem unique to the East Coast. It happens in almost all of the communities where construction is taking place. So the people who live in these areas understand the need for development. But they're upset with the way the trucks operate. So this was a major concern that arose on the East Coast. So yesterday, I convened a meeting with all of the contractors who are working on all of these projects. And the minister was there Minister Colin Crowell, and the traffic chief. And we made it clear to the contractors that we'd hold them responsible for the way the trucks operate in these communities. So I want the people on the East Coast to know that the instructions are quite clear, that when these trucks, we're going to now put speed limits, low speed limits through the villages, which the police will now, they're going to mount these almost immediately, these signs up. Then just behind the villages, when they get to the backlands, the speed limit will go up because they wouldn't disturb anyone there. The trucks are required to close the tailgate both ways, when they're full and when they're empty, because the tailgates, when they leave them open, they just clang all the time when they go over sometimes the speed humps and disturb people. They're required to cover the trucks so that the dust doesn't affect people. And where necessary, they're required to keep the road damp. That is to soak the road. It's all part of their contracts. So the police will now enforce these provisions. But we're not going to hold the truck drivers, we're going to hold them responsible, but ultimately it would affect the contractors. That's why I met with the contractors to see that they should, to insist that they should enforce this provision on their drivers, or even if they're subcontracting the work out. So I want the people on the East Coast to know that this is what will obtain. And it's the same issue for those who live on the East Bank and other communities. We're going to be doing the same thing for all of these communities. We can't stop the development work, but at least we can alleviate some of the concerns of the residents when in the construction phase. Some of the communities also ask for speed humps, especially where schools, their roads are next to schools. I've also directed the Ministry of Public Works to look into this. So those communities that require the speed humps should call Public Works. Now we do have some problems there too. When I was in Enmore, there was a big fight over, one group wanted speed humps and another group said too many speed humps. So of course we have to balance that issue. These were some of the key issues that I found on the East Coast. The next complaint was derelicts on the side of the road, in the communities and on the public road. So these are going to be removed. Now, for those people who have been keeping their old vehicles on the side of the road, and they still want them, remove them. Because if you're not going to remove them and you still want those vehicles, we're going to come and take them away and dump them. So don't say you have not been forewarned, because people are just fed up with a number of individuals who have been doing this, just throwing anything they have, any old piece of iron, or conducting business on the roadside and leaving all of these derelict vehicles there. So I thought I should start today, because this is an issue that we've been hearing a lot about. I already spoke last week of the issue of people parking on roadsides and how we intend to address that through these commercial parks that are currently being built, where people would have to pay to park. But that will come on stream shortly. I want to return to, since we're we've been talking a lot about ideas, and I want to return to the suggestions made by people through the manifesto. If you look at these, we have, I just give you an idea of what we have received so far, and we have had to remove duplicating suggestions. But this, like large numbers of input we have had from people right across the country, from the indigenous communities, from the coastal areas. People of every race, every class have been submitting suggestions for the manifesto. And we really appreciate this level of participation. And a lot of the suggestions are great suggestions. Some are very small things that can vastly improve the way we work. They may not make its way into the manifesto as a policy, but trust me, a lot of them would be implemented because they're really great suggestions coming in, and these are citizens of the country who have been engaged in this process. So I want to applaud all of those people because they take a lot of effort into making these submissions. But as we have been doing at several meetings, the President has been doing this himself and many ministers. We are speaking of the future. So we believe that people must know what to expect in the next 5 years. They have already seen what we have done, the fulfillment of our promises. They can go around and see the country is changing, and they have physical evidence of that change. But many people want to know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. We're the only party that's talking about what will happen in the next 5 years. No other party has defined any plan for the future. And that is why they are engaged now in trying to polarize the country, because they really don't have any plan to talk about. So I want to return to a couple of things that have been, because I saw some of the suggestions coming up again that we had spoken of earlier. And this is the introduction of the blockchain technology in fighting corruption and promoting greater accountability. Now, the blockchain technology, I spoke of this in the past, is what powers digital currency. And so it's almost tamper-proof. You can't go back and change codes that are from the past. So we have to use this technology in some places where we have had complaints about tampering with public records. The land registry, for example. GGMC, where often we hear small miners come and complain that the moment they have a piece of land and the moment they make a discovery of gold on their land, then some guy comes up with maybe some bigger miner comes along and they say, but my application was in before this person, the person who made the discovery. And you know, we have the policy at GGMC is first come, first serve. It's done on that basis, the allocation of the land. So if you discover a prior application, then most likely the other person will get the land. And they often tamper with the records. You know, they just go and stick in an earlier application from a wealthy guy or someone of that nature. And this is a frequent complaint I get here. And there's no way that the policymakers can verify this. But if we have a tamper-proof technology and the records are all kept in this form, nobody could go back and change records to suit particular individuals or to disadvantage maybe small people. And at the land registry, we hear this often. So this is something that we are committed to introducing in many public sector agencies that have to do with records and public service in particular areas. The electronic patient's health record system is being worked on now. We've already awarded that contract. In the next term, every person in Guyana will have their record, and it would be in an electronic form. It would follow you through your life. So whether you go abroad, your doctor from abroad could access this record, of course with their appropriate safeguards. If you go to a public institution or private institution, your health records can be accessed. And then it lends itself to better delivery of health care. Of course, that is why we pass privacy laws, to ensure that people's records and the content of their records doesn't get into the public domain, because there'd be serious penalties for people who release people's medical records. But this is a crucial piece of work that has been awarded and is advancing now, that will change the way we deliver health care to some extent in the future, apart from what the other things we're doing now, which is improving facilities and management and getting more personnel and getting more medical, the drugs in the hospital, etc. All of those will be the combined package for the future. But again, this electronic patient's health record system is moving faster. There's been a big public support for cameras and e-ticketing systems and a lot of that. The police using more technology in solving crime. I've seen some criticism of the camera in one of the editorials. But wherever I've gone, like on the East Coast villages, people are saying, when are the cameras going to come to our communities? We just don't want them on the highways. We want them everywhere in our communities, because we have a lot of petty crime, in some of these areas. We don't even report some of the petty crime, but we want the cameras in our communities. So there's a massive public support for this sort of thing. And I can assure you, like I said it on the East Coast villages, as soon as we're covered, the highways and the command centers are built out, then all of the villages and different wards in the city, etc., in the towns, will get these cameras along with street lights, because 100,000 of those are now being procured to go into all of these communities to focus on security. But I just wanted to come back. And the e-ticketing is gaining public support because no one can request a bribe. You can't negotiate with a camera. So if you're a politician or you're the commissioner of police and you speed, you'll get the ticket. You can't go and say, I'm an important person or not. Once you breach the limit, the speed limit, or anybody, you can't go and bribe the policeman too. A lot of people not happy about that. They will want you to stop bribery and everything else, but then they're saying, you know, you shouldn't have the e-ticketing system. It's going to expand, and it will cover more activities. It will cover more activities because you'll be able to track vehicles that don't have their fitness up to date, maybe even eventually their insurance. So from the time you move past a camera, they'll flag all of these things. You don't need a policeman any longer to stop you on the roadside, etc. You just get, you know, a ticket at home. So I know people are not happy with this because they've been receiving tickets and they say, oh, they call me and they said, I wasn't speeding. And then you have the vehicle there and the exact speed at which they pass the cameras. They don't lie. So using that system more to hold in law enforcement, apart from the cameras, but for traffic management, will be vital. And then also in the next term, we have to ensure that we have a foolproof way of addressing the public concerns. Like the 911 system must work, and it must work in a fashion that it holds people accountable. We intend to, at the police stations, if you make a call to a police station, then the call gets recorded there and gets kicked to another national system where it gets recorded. So later, a policeman can say if they're in Wim or in Buxton, I didn't get this call, I didn't receive it, because it's recorded somewhere, and the content of the call would be recorded. So what I'm getting at here is using, we spoke of the digital society in the past, and I'm just giving you a little glimpse into some elements of that digital society that will change the way they interface with the government, or the government enforces the law. I've already spoken about the paperless airport, and you know, in the financial sector, how the digital society would work there. Easy way of setting up bank accounts, you know, using digital money or your phone to do banking. Internet banking would be a major thing across the country. Those are the things we're working on for the next 5 years. So I can tell you that it would require a lot of new people that we have to hire into the system, particularly young people, because some of the systems can't run with the same mindset that some people who are currently manning them have, because they are not attuned to using technology to solve problems. They don't have the requisite skill, so they'll be retrained, but then we'd have to hire a slew of young people to populate these entities and to run this system. This would be a crucial thing for the future, and I hope that young people would get ready, in fact, prepare themselves for this. So we're going to emphasize scholarships in many of these areas, like cybersecurity and this sort of stuff, like people, even maintenance for the cameras and a whole range of stuff that we have. Emphasis on those kinds of jobs for the future. I just wanted people to start thinking about that. So hopefully, if you have additional suggestions on the digital society, that's the feedback I'm giving to you now, those who have been sending this information to the party, because there's a party's press conference, so you've been sending, and I'm grateful for that, but this is the direction. So we're still open to ideas about additional areas in the digital society that we can work on that will allow us to better deliver government services to people and make the lives of our citizens easier, less time consuming. They can do the things that they do now. If they take a day to do it, they can get it done in minutes, like processing of passports, a whole range of stuff. Accessing almost any government service will be through these online portals, even in the agricultural sector. The online portals will, you can just go there using AI to answer questions. So if a farmer calls in and says, I have a particular bug on my farm, and you may say, upload a picture of the bug. You know, a picture of the bug, they just upload a picture of the bug. They'll tell you what bug it is, and also what kind of maybe drugs you have to use, pesticide to get rid of it. So that sort of thing, where you now have to hunt an agronomist who might have to come and visit your farm and check what kind of, bug you have or what kind of infestation, that could be eliminated. Using it in education, AI in education will be a massive new direction for the government in the next 5 years. And this is something that we're excited about from the perspective that we can then deliver almost individualized education to the children. Well, not just children, to people of the country. And having said that, I want to reiterate what I said, because this suggestion before, the suggestion has been coming up a lot, that we will build the labs in every region. We'll build labs in all the regions, so that those who are doing technical scholarships on the GOLD program, that they don't have to move physically to Georgetown to do the labs, because it's very costly. And this is all in keeping with our trust to reduce the cost of funding education from parents. We've already done it by making university education free, paying for the CXC and CSEC, 8 subjects. The children grant, we're exploring also how we can assist with transportation in the future. But this is consistent with that team. So if you're in Essequibo or you're in Linden, you don't have to come to Georgetown and rent an apartment to go to UG, because on the GOLD scholarship, you can do your labs. You'd have a lab just in Linden, or one in Anna Regina or somewhere along the Essequibo coast, or throughout all the regions. So you can do all your labs there and then do the tutorials online. So that will happen too. The president has been mentioning a lot. He recently met with a group of people, and he reiterated this point about the development of commercial areas, small commercial parks, for want of a better word, in communities right along the coast and maybe even in the hinterland. So we've had 2 sets of complaints. One is that people have polluting business in the communities that they want to move out. I spoke of that last week. And some people want more recreational commercial areas in their villages, especially if they're big villages along the coast. So take, for example, the area at Hope, next to the school, Hope School. we had intended to allocate house lots there. But that whole area that you see the infrastructure in, when you go around the term, would be developed into a commercial area where people can, have salons and small shops, etc. So they can go there. You don't need to establish the business like maybe in Dutch Fort or Hope or one of the other areas. You can easily go into the commercial area in the evening along that area of the East Coast. They have activities right into their communities. So this would happen multiple areas, lots of lights, safe areas for the children, etc. So, and this would also serve the additional benefit of removing these facilities from within the villages themselves. Outside of that, we'd also have to do the industrial parks. So commercial for non-polluting and industrial parks for the welding shops and everything else. You can't put that in the middle of the commercial areas. And then, as I mentioned, commercial parking for the big trucks, etc., so that they move away out of the villages. So those are some of the ideas that we plan to put in place in the next term too. So it's commercial parks, industrial parks, and also commercial parking, but not the mega ones like we're doing at Fowles or like we did at Eccles, but mini parks in many of the smaller communities across the country, so that they can solve these problems and give people a lot of recreational opportunities right into their villages back around the country. It's part of the decentralization. So that will solve a whole range of problems that people now face that had developed because of the lack of zoning for many years. Maybe for 50 years, the zoning laws were not enforced, and therefore you can have a polluting activity right next door to where people are living, and creating problems for them. So that is something that you're going to see in the next 5 years. There's been a big dispute recently about underprivileged people. And so I wanted to address this matter when I speak of the exploitation of the tragic death of Adriana Young. But recently, some people have been speaking of, first of all, we've had, I spoke of this before, a number of people who we believe dishonor this child's death and life, and their family made it clear too they don't want violence by engaging in violent activities and looting, beating people up, stabbing them unprovoked on the street like the homeless man, all in the name of justice. So I was pleased that everyone condemned it, including the opposition parties. They said, and disassociated themselves from this. Then they blamed the PPP. They said the PPP had planted people to do this sort of activity using the 10 days workers. Now, another group within the opposition is saying that the people who did this were disadvantaged and underprivileged people. and that the failure to address them is somehow a failure of the PPP's governance in office. So let me make it clear, first of all, that these individuals have nothing, they're not PPP plants. If they break the law, I don't care if they claim they're PPP or not, but I know that many of them were mobilized by the opposition, who then distanced themselves from them when they got into trouble. But whether they're PPP or not, I support strong enforcement action against anyone who broke the law. I support that. So a few people, very few, may be caught up in the protests unfairly. But the majority of those people who are charged and before the court, there are video evidence of their transgressions, them breaking the law, looting or harming people. Now, they have to be dealt with in a single way, with the full force of the law. Nobody is immune from strong legal action. But are we, as a society, did this group of people who now being defended by the opposition, did they do this because of exclusion from society? That's the question. They seem to blame the PPP for their exclusion from society. So clearly, we have to do much more work to reach poor people. But if you talk about underprivileged people and poor people in this country, you have as a duty to trace, and you blame politicians for it, you have to trace the evolution of poverty and the evolution of wealth creation and opportunities historically. And the People's National Congress, an AFC, have had control of this country. They ran this country for more than half of the period since independence. They are 28 years in office. Then they had another 3 years from 2012 to 2015 when they controlled the parliament. And then they had 5 years as a government. So what did they do for underprivileged people and poor people in Guyana? In 1992, in 1990, as I pointed out recently, 89%, 87% of the population was living under the poverty line. The Ramprakash study that they commissioned through CIMAP showed that. 87% of the population living below the poverty line. That's a study that they commissioned in the early 90s. Sir Alistair McIntyre said we were in 1990, his report, we were poorer than Haiti. So you didn't only dispossess or made poor a small group of people, you made almost the entire country poor. That is your track record. People of every race, not just a couple of guys who are robbing people. You made everybody poor. Public servants were pauperized in that period. When we got into office, the minimum wage, and which most people around the minimum age, was $25 a month. You recall the period, if you ask your parents, etc., you would find out that the public servants were busy trading. They were used to go to Trinidad and buy little things in suitcases and come back into Guyana. Couldn't survive in that period. So we took that country, no middle class, no housing there in that period. They'd stopped building houses. People didn't have jobs. We were burdened by debt. No drugs in the hospital, the destruction of all the infrastructure. And by 2015, we had a growing middle class of people of every race. In fact, a fairly large middle class, but lower middle class. We had people starting to get wealthy again. We had fixed the finances of the country, made it solvent again. So that was the record of our 23 years in office. I'm not going to go through it there. People started owning things once more. We had a Diamond Scheme built, Eccles built, Amelia's Ward expanded, Block 22 in Linden expanded. I can list the number of places. Sophia, that was a squatters settlement. We started putting in infrastructure in Sophia, etc. People started owning things. They started getting jobs. Then you got back into office. 5 years. Where was Nigel Hughes or Cathy Hughes? At their press conference, they're talking about these people are dispossessed. And that is why they behave in that criminal manner. But what were they doing? Cathy Hughes was a minister. Nigel Hughes was chairman of the AFC. Simona Brooms, who was at the press conference, she was a minister of the government. What did they do with these kids? In fact, more people started losing jobs again. The same people that they're talking about lost jobs again. They lost welfare. And since we've come back into office, now we have labor shortages. So if any of these youngsters want to be trained, we have gone out, we have publicly said that we will pay for every training, from Gold Scholarship or the Tech Voc training, we'll pay for them if they wanted that. 2, they can find jobs now. These youngsters can find jobs if they want to work. I was in Success, and the people said to me, these boys hanging around on the ball field here all day, they don't want to work. And I said, I can find work for them. They said, oh, they don't want to work. So they can find work, they can get a government opportunity to pay for training, but it's the APNU that don't want them to be trained, because this is an army of people that they can mobilize and then to do their bidding and then disassociate themselves from them again. They're not interested in these youngsters to change their lives. They only want them to remain in a situation where they could be mobilized. And that is why they constantly, like the Ferguson said to people, don't apply for the scholarship, you're never going to get it. They don't want the people, you should be in your base saying, make full use of the scholarships. It's like I didn't see Simona Brooms fighting for scholarships for these guys that they say are dispossessed, who are looting, etc. They're not fighting for scholarships when she was a minister or to train them. In fact, she got, I don't know, $50 million for her 2 kids who were not Guyana scholars. They got scholarships for her own children. Cathy Hughes was busy awarding contracts to herself, to her own company. What was she doing with about these kids? So now they blame the PPP. Now more people are being trained under the PPP. When I went to Ling Avenue, we got 62 of the young ladies in that community to go through the BIT program for training. You ask how many of them went to Lane Avenue in the 5 years and got anybody to be trained. We got a lot of youngsters from those areas now under the heavy equipment training program. In many villages, in Sophia, we have done this, and across the country. We've been making an effort to get all of our people. So it's good. We will continue to work because we can't lose these youngsters. It's a problem across Caribbean societies and maybe globally, where we're losing more men. The women are making more progress in society. They're enrolling, they're finishing primary school, secondary schools, university, and the men drop out. And we have to make an effort to catch them. So we have to make a serious effort. Even when they go into prison, we have to try to rehabilitate them, like we're talking about compulsory schooling in prison and all of that. And the idea is to catch them even before they get into prison. But you have a group of people, the PNC, AFC, and the others, and I'm calling their name now. They want these kids to remain. This is a pool of people that they can mislead constantly to carry out their bidding. And then they abandon them like they did now. They said they're PPP people. So they show up, they're all gone to prison, or a lot of them have been remanded to prison. So it's disingenuous, it's disgusting that they would blame us for this. We have made an effort, an outsized effort to include people. And their failure in government and even out of government, they don't even service these youngsters. They only go there around election time or to mobilize them for these activities. So some people in this group, they're misguided. And others are purely criminal in intent, and you have to come down heavily on them with the law enforcement. But the misguided ones we have to keep working with. And how do we structurally adjust this? This brings me to this point that we're talking about, the civics. So in the next government, we have to go back. Compulsory subject in school must be the civics, or citizen education. When I was president, I met with the religious leaders and from the 3 major faiths in Guyana, and I said to them, they asked to introduce religious education in school, and I said, we cannot do that because, you can offer it, maybe do it on your own, but we can't do this. But I'm prepared if the 3 groups get together and come up with a series of things that we can teach, say, call it moral education or something, whatever we call it, then we're prepared to put that in the school system. But I think if we can go back to that, to get the religious communities to come up with the common things in the 3 major faiths in Guyana, which is, when you look at it, it's basically they all want the same thing. And combine that with citizens' education, the rights and responsibilities of a citizen, the Constitution of Guyana and their rights according to the Constitution, maybe, the value of democracy and the need to preserve freedom, patriotism, the integrity of our borders. All of these can be combined along with what is distilled from the three major faiths in one area, in one subject, which could be a compulsory subject in school, with the hope that we would incubate better citizens at that level. This is something that we are open to introducing in the school system. So hopefully we be able to have more patriotic people and people who would not lie so blatantly. Look at the callous and disgusting attempt to use this child's death to mobilize people for a political purpose or to polarize our people along ethnic lines. This is a disgusting attempt by the opposition. Look at the lies, the outrageous lies being told by this nurse aide. How could you invent something like that? And then release it in the public domain. How could you even dishonor this child by doing something like that? And then spread it. Their influencers were spreading it like wildfire. You have to be warped to believe something like that the minister would ask a nurse aide, not even a nurse, to go and witness an autopsy and to give her technical opinion of it. You have to be like really, really mentally deficient to even believe that. The nurse aide, you qualify for a nurse aide because you can't make it as a nurse as yet. You don't have the requisite qualification. But the minister would ask you to give a technical opinion on the autopsy. The three pathologists are there, trained 12 years of their life, 15 years, thousands of autopsy combined among them. And you give an opinion, the minister wants your opinion. And people imbibed it. They spread it like wildfire. And that's why, I believe it's got to be the same people who actually believe that APNU won the 2020 election. I saw someone post that. Because it's the same sort of straining of credulity. It is really something. And then a lawyer, a mediocre lawyer at best, not a prominent lawyer, suddenly can pronounce that the death is a result of a homicide. Without any investigation, without any, I can't imagine that, and people would allow themselves to believe this stupidity because they are looking for something to hang on to. And why are they looking to polarize our people? Because they cannot go to the electorate with achievements or plans. They're not going to talk about jobs for people in the future or whether you would own a car or you're going to own a house, which we are talking about. We want people to own things, to have a better education, to have a better health care. They can't compete on that. This is the only way of getting people to vote for them. Go back to the old racism. And everything is PPP. The president promised a thorough investigation. We brought in the pathologists, their own pathologists, prominent person, all concluded the same thing. They were witnessed by their lawyer and the doctor. And then they turned because the family lawyer and the family doctor came out and spoke professionally about what took place there. They turned on them because they are looking, and these are the trolls and the PNC people. That's all they're looking for. You can say nothing that will satisfy them. Not a single thing would we able to do. You can bring anybody in the world, 100,000 persons to investigate the matter. And if they conclude, if they don't have a conclusion that they want to hear to polarize the country, they would not believe. This is what's turning into a fiasco and dishonoring this child, using her politically. Now, we all were concerned about it as a country, every one of us. That's why we took such, no other child or any other death has been investigated at this manner, like in the autopsy, from the autopsy perspective, ever in the history of our country, because we wanted to get to the truth. And now you saw there would be another person will join the team from the RCMP, will join the investigation team. The Ministry of Home Affairs announced that today from Canada will join the investigation team. If you look at the CV of the person, experience in this matter, an investigation, and we hope that we'll find the truth, whether it was through negligence that this child died or foul play. That's all we're looking for. That's what we want, so that we can bring this matter to a closure and do justice to the child and her parents. This is what, but these people, it's such a callous, shameful thing for them to do. Imagine hosting the press conference there just outside the hotel. Nobody was paying attention to them. And even now they're not paying much attention to Nigel Hughes and his gang of misfits that were there. And they even lied on Norton. You saw Cathy Hughes lying blatantly. That is the typical AFC people. They lie all the time. Remember, Patterson said he had the SOPs that showed they won? You remember the same Cathy Hughes with her Russian thing helped to rig the elections in 2020? Well, the Hughes got a taste of it. She lied blatantly just a couple of weeks ago, or last week. Said that they invited Norton, and it was a lie to the press conference because they were hoping to steal the show from Norton. So if he had gone there, maybe Norton would have taken over. This is what it's all about. Nothing to do with this. So my point is that when you talk about, when the AFC speaks about dispossessed people and poor people, examine your own party's track record of what they did to alleviate poverty. Nothing. In fact, more people grew poor under them. Almost all the progress that we've made since the 60s, when Guyana used to be the Singapore of the Caribbean, has been made under the PPP, because your years have been spent at decumulation of wealth, pauperizing of our people. And I can demonstrate it using instances and figures. You've failed the communities. You have failed Afro-Guyanese. The PNC has failed Afro-Guyanese. In office and out of office, always failed them, because they see them as a vote bank and nothing else. As a vote bank, nothing else. And only thing that you want to look at is to get the mislead people. They were mobilizing these people, not just kids, but the people who went out. They were mobilizing them, directing them. Look at the people who were there in the crowd. You have prominent PNC activists from the city council, 2 of them, and from Congress Place, mobilizing people, urging them on to do illegal activities, and then abandoning them and blaming the PPP, the usual playbook. So they failed the country, they failed Afro-Guyanese, they failed everybody, and they're failing these youngsters. So we will work with people. We still have to find a way to get these guys who hang out on the street corner. I don't know, frankly speaking, we're at the wit's end how to help. Because you can find a job for someone or get them trained, but how would you, if they don't want it, because they find it easier to rob somebody, like in the villages on the East Coast. It's not just an All Boys Town phenomenon or a Georgetown thing or among Afro-Guyanese. Now, it's in a lot of the Indo-Guyanese communities too. There's a group of youngsters who don't want to work. They complain about no work. In my village, you have a lot of people. I've seen they complain, but they don't. If you find work for them, a number of them come to me. They don't want to. They don't want the regimentation of work. They want to just hang out and maybe work 2 days. They don't show up elsewhere, to work, and then rob people. It's not just something for government, it's for the churches and everybody else to work with these youngsters. So we have to find a way of embracing them and working with them. But if you commit criminal acts, you burn people's property, or you beat them up, or you stab them, or you loot their stores, you got to go to jail, because that's a criminal act. That's a criminal act. And look at the lies again that the PNC would tell. Now, there is this man, the man issued a statement, Glenroy Fraser. So they're trying to say, and they've been attacking the judiciary all the time, and the powers in the judiciary remain silent. They attacked the Chief Justice a couple of weeks ago, Norton himself, and now another magistrate. So they said this Glenroy Fraser, a PPP activist, created the impression he was part of the protests and the looting, and that Sonia Parag talked to the magistrate and got him released after he was remanded. They put out a statement. Now, it's true that Glenroy Fraser from Belladrum was on our list at local government, and he's an activist of the PPP. But the matter that he was in court, this is what he put out, his statement, he explained it. This is what, I'm going to just read a little part of what he said. Well, outside of the outrage at the press release by APNU, I wish to make factually clear and to avoid any doubt, the matter I have before the Weldad Magistrate Court is separate and completely unrelated to the illegal protests and unlawful activities that occurred in West Berbice on the evening of April 28, 2025. As a matter of fact, I have an ongoing court matter since September 11, 2024, with Ivan Reynolds, a known PNC activist who struck me on my head whilst I was conducting my itinerant business at Belladrum Secondary School. He had an old matter there before the court. And then they went and lied on him, the PNC, and the magistrate might have remanded him because of that old matter, and then his lawyers got involved. This is what they're saying, oh, the PPP got their activists who was part of the protest released from remand, lying on the man. This is the typical PNC way of working. One suggestion more that came in. What are we going to do about Dorman Park? Everybody keep asking, about that. I'm talking about the manifesto. Remember, I was just manifesto promises. I was just talking about what we're going to do in the next term, and this civics education is something we want to introduce compulsorily in school. Hopefully it would tackle, some of the issues that we have, that people would not spread their lies so quickly on social media or believe their lies and be so gullible. Now, some people you can't help. They would spread their lies for political reasons. A lot of the PNC activists, etc., they do it. But hopefully if we do that. So I was still on that. But the Durban Park, I want to say, we will rehabilitate it. It was a monumental PNC corruption, 600 million missing from it. Of the 1.6 billion that they said they spent on it, 600 million missing formally through the audit report. I don't know informally how much was missing, because you can't tell me you spent $1 billion on that. But we need to fix it. So I want to say to the people who have made this suggestion that we clean it up and fix it up in the next term, yes, that's going to be done. It's going to be, I think we've learned in the 5 years, we had to let APNU have its monument to their five years in office. Now, I want today's editorial in Stabroek News, tariff strategy or paralysis. So, I had outlined to you the approach that we intend to take on this matter. When the US announced the reciprocal tariffs. I met with the exporters and I said to them, we intend to engage the US administration because we believe that we have some very strong arguments why this tariff should not be applied to Guyana, given that the tariff was calculated on the basis of the trade surplus which we had with the United States of America. They applied the standard formula for all countries that had trade surpluses with the US, and as a result of that, we were stuck with this reciprocal tariff of 38%. I explained how it was calculated here at the press conference. I told the reporters that we're hoping to get this removed. We'll be working with the US administration on this, and that should we not succeed, we have explored a number of measures that we intend to pursue that would allow our exporters to still remain competitive in the United States of America. None of those measures that we spoke of has to do with retaliation against the US. So this is the Stabroek editorial. It says, many nations, ours accepted, have already formulated retaliatory measures to counter the potential economic damage. So what they're suggesting is that somehow we're deficient in Guyana because we don't plan to retaliate against the United States for this tariff, that we're deficient and that we're not planning enough. It's a paralysis. Now you have to be extremely stupid to hold that view. How could a country like ours, with a bilateral trade that we have with the United States of America, plan retaliatory tariffs against the United States of America as one of the menu of measures to address this matter. Everything has to lead to one conclusion: cooperation, working with the US to overcome this. Not retaliation. What are you going to retaliate against? Even the big countries in the world fear this. The Mexicos, where they have massive trade surpluses, fear this. Mexico, Canada, the European Union. They're cautious with retaliatory measures. And they want Guyana to pursue retaliatory measures. This is the Starbuck News editorial. And we are deficient as a country. And the PPP is deficient because it has not planned its retaliatory measures and told the Starbuck News what they are. Because we have made it public. This is when you get to absurdity. And every week we have to deal with this absurdity that passes off as knowledge or erudition. We have to deal with this on a weekly basis. And Guyana was initially identified as one of the worst offenders. That means we had a huge trade surplus with the US. That's made us a worse offender. It's ridiculous. By the way, Minister Ashni Singh had a good meeting with the US Trade Representative, Ambassador Jameson Greer. He was in Washington, and he had a good meeting discussing our views on this matter. It is the quiet diplomacy that we'll work through, and working with the US government so that they understand why the trade surplus arose. It's mainly because of our export of oil, and most of that is from Exxon, a US company. So that is the approach we will take, not planning retaliatory tariffs. You know, even China is cautious about this, but Guyana, you know, they have $1 trillion economy. I don't know who writes this sort of editorials for the Starbuck News. Sometimes really. Now, since we spoke last week, the IMF has gone to the board. Remember, they issued a statement that we had a good management of the oil and gas sector last week. That was the summary of the document, and also at a press conference that they had in Washington. That's what they, when asked, they spoke of that. Good management of the oil and gas sector. Well, the report was tabled, the entire Article 4 consultation, and you would see they also tabled with the Article 4, the staff report, a debt sustainability analysis. And if you look at the conclusion on the debt sustainability analysis, they just had one sentence there. In fact, they have many sentences, but I just draw your attention to one sentence because it responds to all that we've been hearing from all of those people who've been saying the debt is unsustainable, and that we are saddling future generations with an unsustainable debt. So we have pointed out we have some of the lowest debt to GDP ratios in the world, and also that we're using just a fraction of our revenue to service that debt, unlike the past. We pointed this out before, but the one sentence that I wish to draw your attention to, it says total public debt has fallen considerably since 2020. Has fallen considerably, and they measure debt to GDP ratio. So that sentence there would answer all the critics. The next sentence is what the headline of the Starbuck News article speaks to. Guyana does not yet show clear symptoms of Dutch disease. Now, this is the biggest fear for countries that have received a windfall in revenue, that it will cause the Dutch disease, which could be harmful to long-term prosperity, medium and long-term prosperity. It's the worst thing that could happen to a country. It may not seem so. It kills off every other sector of the economy, particularly the manufacturing and agriculture sector, if the exchange rate appreciates, which is a symptom of the Dutch disease. So that is a very, very positive thing for us, because you've had speculations, again, by some of these wild forces in Guyana, that we are already in the middle of the Dutch disease. Then I want to read a sentence to you here, or not a sentence, a paragraph, so you can see what we are focused on. It added that going forward, the government should continue bolstering its Dutch disease mitigation policies towards, one, developing and implementing medium-term fiscal framework to smooth spending. I'll deal with that in a minute. And two, supporting the diversification of the economy, including export diversification strategies and the expansion of the manufacturing sector through structural reforms and investment programs, while enhancing productivity in non-oil tradable sectors by improving business environment, including through investing in resilient infrastructure, ensuring reliable and affordable energy supply, investing in human capital, and strengthening governance. A long sentence. So for all of those who have been critical of our approach to the economy and our management style, we've already made it clear that this is precisely what we are doing. First of all, we have developed a medium and long-term framework that shows our fiscal deficit coming down significantly. So I see Jordan in the Stabroek, IMF cites fiscal deficit. I gave an explanation to that already, why the fiscal deficit will come down over the medium term. Because all of the capital projects that contribute to the fiscal deficit now, and the fiscal deficit are around the same levels like they were under APNU, but they were not constructing anything, slightly higher, but the fiscal deficit now is caused by the massive capital program that we have been embarked upon. So when we finish building the highways which we're building, or the power plant, which are all on the budget, or the bridges, say the bridge across the river, they come off the budget. So that means immediately the fiscal deficit shrinks. So when we have built out the schools and the hospitals and the road network and the power plants, etc., the fiscal deficit, we don't need capital expenditure on these issues. It will cause a massive reduction in the fiscal deficit, but we would have already built out the infrastructure. So we've laid that out already. Two, our economic diversification program is in full swing. And this is supported by what they said, the IMF said, that the real non-oil GDP expanded by 13%, reflecting a solid base performance across sectors. So it means that the non-oil sector is growing at 13%, which is massive by any standard. Some countries are not growing at 13%. Most countries in the world, if they grew at 5%, it would be high. Our non-oil sector is growing at 13%, and the oil sector is growing even more. But that is deliberate because it reflects a policy for keeping the economy diversified, which is one way of fighting off the Dutch disease. And I'm not going to go through much more here. I just want you to look at it, but read it with some background knowledge of what has happened. So the Starbuck News took a dig at us and saying that the IMF report also cited labor and unemployment figures from 2021, which may challenge the government's claim here about the creation of more than 50,000 jobs since 2020. Now, if they gave the 2021 figures here and showed a massive rate of unemployment among youth at 31.9% in 2021, that was in the COVID period, but many people had already lost their jobs before COVID. How does that cast doubt on a 2025 figure? That's the baseline. That's where the starting point is. But if you can't tell me today, even anecdotally, that 32% of people who are looking, that's 1 in every 3 persons, a young person looking for a job, can't find a job. We have labor shortages in many parts of the country. You may not get the type of job that you want because the qualification may not be suitable for that type of job, but there are jobs out there for people to get in many sectors of the economy. So the 60,000 jobs are valid. They're valid. In 2021, we didn't have the 15,000 people who were part-time workers in place. So how would that, citing 2021 figures in the IMF report, cast doubt on our assertion in 2025 that we have changed the job landscape in the country? How would it cast doubt on it? And the last point I want to make is that they said that the share of agriculture in overall GDP shrunk. And also, how are we arguing that we're diversifying and promoting agriculture if its share in the GDP, the non-oil GDP, shrunk? Well, things are not static. So you have a massive expansion in the construction sector. You have a massive expansion in services. If you look at the hotels being built, etc. So they grow. Now, agriculture investment by their very nature is a long-run type of investment. So you're not going to see the supply response immediately for agriculture. It takes time to create a sector. So take, for example, corn and soya industry. We've just put in the infrastructure. We put in some basic infrastructure. They've now started out. It will take us another 3 years before, or 2.5 years before we're fully self-sufficient. So last week I explained the lag between investment and policy and output. Often people don't look at that, and that sort of analysis has to be done here when you look at the lag effect of many of the policies that we are putting in place. So I'm not going to go after Jordan. I'm giving Jordan a break this week. But Starbuck quoted him liberally there. I think I'm going to end there. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Jagdeo, Dennis Shibaldam, sir, I just want a clarification or an update on what's going on with the Wales gas energy project. Is it still ongoing?
Yeah.
And I'll have a follow-up on that. But I also have 3 other questions.
Okay. So Wales. So you asked me if it's ongoing. The answer is yes. So go to the follow-up.
Okay. So the follow-up really is there a plan to divert the gas to, say, across the river or to an existing plant to supply barges ahead of the completion of the project?
No. So there is a proposal that I know of that could utilize the gas to generate power, that if we could generate 300 megawatts of power from, say, the use of a barge until the power plant is ready, that would save us about $1 million US per day. Because to buy the bunker C to generate 300 megawatts of power, it will cost us about $1 million US per day. So there is that proposal. We haven't decided whether we want to pursue it pending the completion of the gas to energy, because we have to see if we can observe, given the transmission means now, whether we can utilize all 300 megawatts of power. So that is being actively studied. It's with the PM at this stage.
Who has made the proposal?
Yes, it's Car Power, but it will be for a short period pending the completion of the plant, the power plant. And so that the gas that is already now available could be used immediately whilst the construction activities are ongoing. So it would save us $1 million per day, basically.
And it will be their barge, Car Power's barge?
Yes, so that they would take it away. Right, exactly.
Okay. And you have a time frame when this might be?
No. I don't have a time frame. It's just a proposal. Right now, there's no decision on it whatsoever.
Right, I know that, but I was asking if you have a time frame by which you will say, well, you'll go ahead or not.
No. Right now, they're studying one issue. The one issue is that if they generate 300 megawatts of power using our gas now, immediately, and we will get some of the fluids from the cleaning of the gas, but it would take them to put maybe about 90 days to get it in place. They would, if we can use all of it, bring it in the transmission main and distribute it, then it's a great proposal. It's a great proposal. If we can't use all of it and we have to pay for it and can't use it because they would want you to pay for all of it, it's a big facility they'll bring down, then it wouldn't make sense.
And we will not yet start paying for the gas until the project starts, right?
No, we're not paying. The gas is there. It's free gas.
Mr. Jagdeo, other questions. Yeah. Any commitment from the U.S. Trade Representative on the matter of the tariffs? You said Dr. Singh spoke with...
No. The U.S., the report we got from Dr. Singh is that the U.S. understands how the deficit, the surplus arose. That's the key thing we wanted to communicate with them, that it is as a result of our export of oil, mainly as an export of oil into the U.S.
Lastly, the status of the national census.
Huh?
The status of the national census. What's
status?
Yes, we have not yet...
I'd asked some time back that all matters related to the census, you deal with Ashni Singh on those matters. He controls the Stat Bureau, Ashni Singh.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, Sharon Belger of Kiteshore News. Just have 3 questions. The first one, Hess has released its report and it stated that from Guyana, 633 million US were added to cost. What I want to ask, will the government push for Exxon and CNOOC to provide us a quarterly report of their costs that they're, or the amount that they're adding to their cost bank as well for the Sarawak block? And secondly, can you say, does government have a timeline of when Guyana will stop paying exploration costs to the Stabroek block? And my final question is, over the years since independence, Guyana's, foreign investors have been coming and have been taking out our natural resources. Can you say if Guyana has been fairly compensated over the years for those natural resources, which includes gold, bauxite, and recently oil?
Okay. This is a Glenn Lal question, the last one. So I'm sure he gave you this one because this is his pet thing. So one, let me tell you, I don't know, I see him, the new presidential candidate, then a long time I didn't speak about him. So I was on a radio program and I think there was a reporter there to interview me on the Kiteshore radio, and Glenn Lal crashed the interview. So he had something before him, an iPad, and people were sending him the questions. So he had a hard time even asking the questions. But he brought up the same question. He brought up 2 things. In fact, 3. Let me go through them. 1. Up to now, he has not answered. And today I have some time. So he said that I own the Marriott. He had perpetrated this lie for all the years that Marriott was under construction. That Jagdeo owned the Marriott, or people close to Jagdeo owned the Marriott. So I said to him, if you can bring the evidence of it. APNU came into office, were there for 5 years, didn't find any evidence that I own the Marriott. It's 100% owned by the government. Then I'll resign. Until today, he still says it, but no evidence of it. He then said why are we going to build a power plant? He could get a supplier to bring power at 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And until today, I'm waiting for the 3 cents per kilowatt hour proposal. I said to him, even if it's 8 cents per kilowatt hour, US cents per kilowatt hour, you bring the people. We'd sign up a deal with them. Didn't show up to now. And then he made the same point about the people were ripping off us in the bauxite sector. That the Russians and everybody were at Araima. And I said to him, okay, APNU practically chased the people away. We lost 1,000 jobs there. Any concessions that the Russians had, or any foreigner there, first of all, it was Alcoa, Reynolds, then the Russians. Any concession they have, we'll give you twice as much. You go today, take that, since you think it's a money spinner, and you just rehired 1,000 persons force. He didn't show up back with any such proposal. But he runs down everybody what concessions they get all the time. Ask him what concessions he was seeking when he was building the newspaper. And I don't know if he still has the land near the industrial estate. He still has that land there that he got for other purposes. That's a land that's an industrial estate. He put his media outfit there under the government. What concession he got? So I hear this all the time from people like Glenn Lal. He runs down everyone else. As far as I'm concerned, we should chase away, if we listen to a madman like Glenn Lal, chase away everybody from this country. On the same program, I asked him a couple of questions. I said, at that time, our total deposit, aggregate deposit in the banking system, that's all of our savings, every Guyanese, companies and individual, was about $5 billion US. One of the FPSOs would cost you $8 billion, just one. So if we had to take all of our money that we save in the banking system to fund one FPSO, we couldn't even fund it. How do you expect us to produce the oil then? Up to now, you can't get answers because he operates out of the realm of rationality. He operates in a outer space sort of realm. And that is why you can't address these concerns. You yourself had asked us to release all of the contracts that we had with the big companies, the mining companies, because I guess you were encouraged to do that because you thought that the concessions were outrageous and they were variable. One got one set of concession and another got another set or more concessions. You found that they're standard agreement that we have. You saw it. It was released in the public in the past. 2 years now, it's been in the public domain. So this is something we have to deal every day with. It's people who don't have any responsibility, who can own a newspaper, fabricate lies all the time, do whatever they want. They don't have any responsibility for people. I'm general secretary of a political party. When we go out there, people used to ask us about jobs when we were campaigning. So when we got in the office, the first order of priority was to try to put people to work. Why you think the day Irfan Ali was sworn in, the next day we had a cabinet meeting, the country was shut down. And there were 3 cabinet members in favor of opening up back the country with COVID. Because we said, how are we going to put people to work? If you don't work, then you can't take care of your family. And since then to now, the job landscape has been transformed. He's been griping every day on his TikTok. We've been working to get more jobs in the communities. You think the plan for 150,000 house lots fell from the sky, or the 12 hospitals that are already under construction? We had to work at this sort of thing. That's what we've been doing, whilst they've been walking around smuggling things or alternately talking nonsense. So a long time I didn't talk about Glenn Lal. Today, before he gets upset with me, I didn't call his name for a while. So I just thought I'd look at it. The exploration costs, we made it clear that, and the reasoning why the Stabroek, we're not changing the PSA. So at some stage, if we say no more we're not going to approve future development plans, and that may come in the future, then I think proving more reserves may not be something that they want to pursue. But right now we have no intention of stopping any exploration for more oil and gas. In fact, we are encouraging this. That is why we went out to auction, and the auction came out, which was a manifesto promise, without us having two crucial pieces of policy, which we have fixed now, the new PSA and the new Oil and Gas Act. We have fixed those. We went out to tender without those two policies and without seismic. We're now in the process of awarding a number of people the contract to do the seismic. And so the next time we go to auction, we'd be able to hopefully have a good auction, and then to resume exploration simultaneously in several blocks, because we need to prove more reserves. So it's not our intention to curtail exploration. And when the exploration activities go on, it also feeds back into the local economy, because the people who come in to do the exploration, they have to utilize the services of the country, and they have to procure things from our people through the local content law. So it's related back to local prosperity. Whatever is required by law, they have to supply. They have to supply the information, whatever is required. And I hope that the ministry is enforcing this. If they're not, then we should examine it. But if they have to supply by law disaggregated data, then they should do so.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jagdeo.
Good afternoon.
Milton Granum from Stabrook News. Can you say on the Marriott Hotel, Palm Court, also Integrated Management Group is their name also, they had submitted an offer of 85 million, I think it was, which is pretty attractive. Can you say if the government is considering selling to them, considering that the highest bidder had passed away? Also,
they should have been the negotiation with the second-ranked bidder, but I don't think any report has come to us. I've not seen any report about how those negotiations are going, and whether they started and how they're going. So NISIL, if they're pursuing that negotiation now actively, they would have to report to us. But right now, I don't think it's a priority of the government.
Also, on the taxes, Marriott doesn't pay any corporate taxes. Can you say why the government continues to support this organization?
Marriott, so they, you mean the hotel? The hotel? But if you followed what I said, one of the reasons why we have all of these new hotels being built, which would be great for Guyana and for jobs in the hospitality sector, and it would transform our ability to host large events. So there are about 11 or 12 hotels under construction now. And the reason we got there is because as soon as we got into office, we put out an expression of interest, notice for expression of interest. We got several responses. Then we met with a number of people, and we changed the incentive regime. So now any hotel, not just the Marriott, which is state-owned, any hotel that is being built would have a 10 years tax holiday. They have duty-free concession for all the material as well as the the furnishing, etc., for the hotel. And I think we've even considered the waiver of the withholding tax on their payments. So if they have to make payments abroad, we remove the withholding tax on those. And that, as a result of that, we've seen this massive influx of investment into the hotels. So it's not just Marriott. It's a standard policy. We go with standard policies. That's why you don't have to come into our offices to negotiate your incentive regime. Once you're in the sector, you go across to Go Invest or GRA, the technical agencies, and get the concession. We're not like the city council. You got to go and sit in the mayor's office and work out a deal. And that's the same thing with mining that the Kiteshore News, when we released the document, showed. There are standard policies. So once you're in the sector at a particular level, this is what you get. It doesn't depend on whether we like you or not, you're foreigner, local, whatever the religion or race, etc. You get that. That's how we operate. And so the other hotels will get it. Their 10 years tax holiday.
Yeah. Dr. Jagdeo Shukwan Gill, DPI. Two questions on your comments on the digital society. First of all, you mentioned the blockchain technology being implemented to target or combat corruption in some agencies. Is that an initiative that has already commenced, or that is for the next term?
We have several proposals now. So it will require quite a bit of work. We have not contracted anyone to do that work as yet. We just contracted the one with the patient, electronic patient record system. So this is something that we will explore in the future. We spoke of it already, but the state of record keeping is bad. So what we are looking now to see if we can't get AI to sort through, so sort the records, so it becomes easier to sort the records rather than do so manually, because often or historically, because of the bad state of our records, we've had to do things manually. So that's being explored.
Thing is in relation to an MOU that I remember was signed with India when PM Modi was here in relation to introducing a digital payment platform. Could you provide an update in any way?
Yeah, the digital payment platform is something that would help enormously. And it is something that supports the bigger goal of financial inclusion, financial literacy, and financial innovation, which we had outlined already would be a huge focus of the next term in office. So a lot of the banks now are developing their own platforms. Many of them, we've been pushing them to introduce people-friendly forms of interfacing with their customers, and that includes like internet banking, etc. The central bank has to lead to ensure that we have proper clearance systems. And the central bank has to almost force some of the banks to go this route, because some of the banks are happy with the state of affairs. So that is something we are working on the payment platform, which could help in so many ways. Not just all, like we already spoke about NIS, we spoke about the cash grants in the future utilizing the system, old age pension being paid through electronic means. And we also mentioned about the new instruments we want to put in place. So fintech or financial technology is something that would be huge. I don't want to go into, I'm trying now to resist the urge to go back and into a long explanation on it, because when we're going to have this public consultation after we've collected all of this information on the manifesto. So we'll make some major presentations on these sectors that you will see that would outline it in its totality, what our plans are. So often here we just give little snippets of some of the things because it takes a while. I don't want to bore people again by spending another half an hour talking about fintech here.
Good afternoon, Kemal King, Vice President. Could you give an update on when exactly we can expect the offshore oil blocks to be issued? Earlier during the energy conference in February, we heard that the government was coming to a point where about 3 or 4 blocks it was going to issue.
You need to, these are routine things, so I don't know where we are now. You should ask the ministry. They should be able to give you an update, because I think they were ready some time ago with one of those to move it forward. But I don't have an up-to-date report on where they are now with those.
Okay, I also wanted to ask about the...
We've been very lenient, to tell you the truth. We've been very lenient because some of the blocks involve local people. And we were really bending overboard to try to accommodate them. And we're still trying to do that too.
Well, the thing is that the wait seems very unusual when you look at how quickly some countries conclude their auctions, and this has been taking quite a few years to...
So let me give you I started off by giving that explanation with the hope that it would serve as an indicator of where we're heading. So clearly we had a manifesto promise that we will move away from the old method of allocating oil blocks, which was if you make an application, you get a block, to a new system for awarding blocks to people. We said we'll do so transparently through an auction, a public bidding process. So we went out and launched the auction. We said, before we allow the auction to conclude, we will supply to those who are going to make bids 2 documents. 1, a new PSA, and 2, a new Petroleum Act. Because the policies in these 2 documents would influence the quality and the nature and the bid price. So the new PSA said, if you were bidding now and you didn't have a new PSA, you were bidding against what was there in the Stabroek block. That would have been the impression in the bidder's mind, that they would have to pay a 2% royalty, zero corporate tax, etc. We changed that to a 10% royalty, a 10% corporate tax, and 65% used for cost recovery. So clearly that was a material change that would have influenced the bid. We didn't get that done in time. It took a long time. We couldn't close the auction. The auction became protracted because it took us some time to develop that policy. We did it in an iterative manner, The reason it took us the long time is because we had to study all the regimes internationally to see, although we were getting more fiscal benefits, we didn't want to put ourselves in a range where we became non-competitive with those countries that were seeking investment dollars for the oil and gas industry. So it took us a while to get that in place. Secondly, the law dictated, the law changed a number of things. We also made it clear that in future, that if you get a block, you had to pay a signing bonus, which was not there before, and two, that there will be penalties for non-compliance with the work commitment, unlike the past. We got the law in place. So the auction itself was a protracted affair. Normally, auctions will go in short periods because people have information and they have a settled fiscal regime. We were still evolving our fiscal regime and the framework. So the auction itself got protracted. Then we got some bids. Most of the bidders were newcomers with no track record. One of the bids was more serious. Maybe two of them were serious bids from people who had some experience. One of those had issues with some of the provisions, the non-fiscal measures there. So we said we were accommodating those. And I think we can, and we want to move forward with them. The others, 2 blocks went to local groups. And we've been working with them to see if they can come up with the signing bonus and meet all of the obligations there. The reason we didn't shut the activity down is because the next auction that we intend to pursue, we're going to have several more properties, including the ones that were not taken up by this auction, the CGX properties, as well as the relinquished area on the Exxon. So the next auction, especially if we cut the blocks into small areas like we did under the past auction, we'd have several properties to put out. So we want to, now that we've had these 2 seminal policy documents in place, we want to bolster that with seismic studies, that when we put out all of these new blocks, an investor could have all of this to make a bid. And we expect more serious bids to come in. We're not rushing to do that. And that is why we can play around and give more time to the existing investors, because if we wanted, we could have closed the deal, but we're now going out back to an auction immediately. We still have to conclude the seismic work, and that is why we've been so lenient and the affair has been so protracted. That is why I just wanted to give you an explanation why this has happened. So if they can raise the money, the local group can raise the money, and they can bring in a good partner, we conclude with them. If they can't, then we're not losing any money or or sleep for that matter. Because in any case, we're not going to put back those blocks on the market until we have seismic done for them.
Well, you mentioned the seismic. The bids came in for the seismic last October. So do you have any idea when you plan to award?
I think they already have a recommendation to cabinet.
Okay, all right. I have a few questions on gas. Should I just ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Have any formal discussions begun with Trinidad on a potential collaboration with gas? Because you made some comments recently, and then the new Prime Minister said that they'll have to explore that. Previously,
the answer is no.
Okay, no problem.
The answer is no.
In recent years, when the prospect of having such a collaboration with Trinidad came up, the government has kind of shrugged that off. So what changed recently that caused you to say, okay, let's start looking into a potential collaboration? And on that, we
No,
saw.
who said that? Who said that?
Said what? No, I'm saying,
What changed?
yeah, what changed? Because over the years, you have not necessarily been so welcoming of having a potential deal with
No,
Trinidad.
but we have not commented on the PM's comment. She said,
Your comment. She said, after you said that you'll explore potentially collaborating with
and this was
Trinidad.
before the elections. I said that before the elections in Trinidad and Tobago, I said, and I want to repeat what I said, that right now, from the gas to energy project, there's no gas to supply to anyone. We need all of the gas there for power generation and the fertilizer plant. That there is a project that we have not approved as yet that is being explored between Fulcrum, Exxon, and the government of Guyana to develop the gas reserves, that they're exploring several options as to what to do with this gas. One, it's to do LNG and export LNG. Two, could be to bring the gas onshore for generation of power to sell to Brazil, power, that is sale of power. Three, to bring the gas onshore for industrialization in Guyana, or a combination of all three, if there is adequate gas. I said, if Trinidad and Tobago is interested, then the tripartite arrangement, Exxon, Fulcrum, and the government of Guyana would have to examine whether taking the gas to Trinidad and Tobago outweighs those other options in terms of financial feasibility. That's the position we took before the election. That's the position we have now. There is no other position on the table. So there is no gas today to supply to anyone. It is the development of that project. Now, assuming Trinidad and Tobago wants to be part of those discussions to see, then they can, I guess we can have them as part of the discussion. But we want the most feasible and the most lucrative to Guyana outcome from the use of our gas. For Guyana, we want to, and if it is, as I said before, if taking it to Trinidad offers that outcome, then that's fine. But we're going to have private investors, so they'd have to make that decision too. It's a private investors. So we said that before the elections. I guess the new government wants to be told the same thing. So we will meet with them, but that is our position as of today. There is no gas to supply tomorrow. We have to develop a project to do that. And that's what, there's no approval for such a project as yet.
And on that, the PM who just left office, Mr. Stuart Young, he said recently that any pipeline from Guyana to Trinidad to carry gas would have to go through Venezuela's waters. Do you see this making such a partnership with Trinidad maybe unrealistic?
I don't know about Venezuela water. Let me don't say what I want to say, because about the maritime boundary, but I don't think he is right.
Okay, so when we spoke in February at the conference, you said that Exxon committed to giving the government news on their gas development plans by the end of March. Now in May, do you have anything to report based on government's engagement with Exxon on gas? And while at Offshore Technology Conference in Houston, Alastair Routledge said that the gas reserves are dynamic, so Exxon is not necessarily going to give a number when asked about the quantity of gas. So what metric is the government using to determine the quantity of gas in the Stabroek Block and the government's comfort level with the gas-related projects that Exxon has proposed and is looking to propose in the future?
Yes, so this is why this activity will be an entirely private one. We are not investing money. There's a huge sum of money has to be invested in developing the gas reserves. So the government is not looking to be part of an equity participant in the venture. That would necessitate us using money from the Treasury to invest in this venture. The government wants to facilitate the development of the project by forcing Exxon to utilize the reserves, or in some cases, like with Pluma and Aymara, or give them up. So, given that approach, you would have, if there were going to be co-investment from another private firm, they would have to use their own metric before they put their money into it to determine how they will verify the quantum of gas in Haimara Pluma and the associated gas from the other fields. So that is why we're not going to get into, at the government level, this issue about how much gas is there, etc. That requires a lot of study. But the guys who, why do you think we chose this approach, which is to, through a public process, select a company that can lead that charge because they're more technically qualified to do so, to put the pressure on Exxon. That is why we chose the company. And they're pushing for that to happen. So that's why, for me personally, since we are not an equity participant, but we want the project to be developed so we get paid for our share of the gas and we get the taxes from the venture. So that's what we want. But we're not willing to invest our money, taxpayers' money, into this venture, not as an equity participant.
For me, one of the major themes that's coming out of OTC 2025 with respect to Guyana's participation, and this has been the case for the past few years, is the government's focus on keeping the economy diverse. But seeing that what we're seeing over the years is the outsized growth of the oil sector compared to the non-oil sector, even though the non-oil economy is growing faster than most countries, what metrics is the government using to gauge its success in keeping the non-oil economy competitive?
So this is precisely, were you here when I spoke about the Stabroek report? And so this one here, which says Guyana does not show clear symptoms of Dutch disease. So it means that that's the key thing to keep the economy competitive. And the non-oil sector, particularly the export sector, the tradable sector. And so they have suggested that we need to cut the medium-term deficit, which is what we're doing in any case, to diversify the economy, which is what we're doing, and to build up infrastructure like cheaper power, more infrastructure, etc. These are some of the ways that you avoid the Dutch disease. So and careful management of the exchange rate, which relates back to the size of the fiscal deficit, of course. So if you look at this, and they spoke about the robust growth, that's why I said real non-oil GDP expanded over 13%, reflecting a solid, broad-based performance against sectors. This is from the International Monetary Fund that did a very intrusive sort of analysis in every sector of the economy. That's their technical report. And then they spoke about inflation too. They said that inflationary pressures remain moderate, driven mainly by internationally determined food prices. You just read the report and you will see, you get answers for everything that you asked me there, because it speaks specifically to that issue. Yes. Okay. Is that it? All right, thank you.